Imagine being thousands of feet in the air, the cabin lights dimmed, everyone asleep, except the one passenger who keeps staring directly at you. Flight attendants are trained to handle emergencies, unruly passengers, even turbulence. But what happens when the real danger is something they can't explain? Tonight, you're about to hear true stories from the people who spend more time in the sky than on the ground. Stories of passengers who vanish mid-flight, voices calling from empty seats, and mysterious knocks coming from beneath the cabin floor where no living person should be. Before you settle in, check your seatbelt, because once we take off, there's no turning back. Hi everyone, welcome aboard. I've talked to flight attendants from all over the world, and trust me, the sky has more secrets than we think. Long night flights, isolated routes, aircraft with tragic histories. It all creates moments when reality feels like it slips, just a little. While most passengers sleep peacefully, crew members walk the aisles alone, facing the strange, the unexplainable, and sometimes the terrifying. Tonight, we're diving into those stories, the ones flight attendants only share with each other behind closed doors, away from passengers who might panic. So turn off the lights, put your phone on airplane mode, and stay until the end, because every story will get darker. And once you hear them, you may never look at your next flight the same way again. Flight attendants are used to passengers boarding late, rushing to place their bags and settle in. But on one overnight flight, a man in a gray suit quietly took seat to 4A long before boarding was complete. He stared out the window the entire time, never responding, never moving, not even to fasten his seatbelt. The crew assumed he was shy or nervous. Strange parts started when the purser came to take passenger count. According to the flight manifest, seat 24A was empty. No one had checked in for it. They checked again, still empty. But the attendants could all clearly see him sitting there, still facing the clouds. During beverage service, one attendant tried to ask if he wanted a drink. No reply, just a cold stillness around him. Hours passed. As the plane descended for landing, seatbelts clicked all around, except his. When the plane touched down, the attendant returned to that row and froze. The seat was empty. The belt was locked tight like no one had ever sat there. Later, they learned something else. A man dressed the same way had died in a crash years ago, in seat 24A, and passengers still report seeing him silently waiting for a flight that will never take him home. On a transatlantic flight, a junior flight attendant was performing the usual cabin walk when she heard it, a metallic knock from beneath the floor. At first, she thought it was luggage shifting. But then, it came again, louder, and timed perfectly with her footsteps. When she walked, it followed. When she stopped, silence. Confused, she reported it to the lead attendant. They checked the cargo manifests. There were no live animals, no unsecured crates, nothing that could be causing the sound. She walked the aisle again. Bang, bang, each step. Something down there felt like it wanted to come up. Trying to stay calm, she pressed her ear to the floor panel. The knock tapped back. At this point, she panicked. The captain was informed, but from the cockpit everything was normal. Midway through the ocean, nobody could check the cargo. The crew sat in the galley, listening to the knocking that seemed to travel beneath their feet. When they landed, maintenance was called immediately. They opened the cargo hold. It was completely empty. No loose objects. No sign of anything alive, but the technicians said something that left them pale. That part of the aircraft? We sealed it shut years ago, because someone got trapped in there and didn't make it. Exit rows are strictly for adults. Flight attendants enforce that rule more than any other. But on a quiet red-eye, a flight attendant noticed a little boy sitting alone in the emergency exit seat. Feet dangling, smiling at her, thinking he had wandered from his parents. She knelt down and asked where his family was. The boy just giggled and pointed toward the window. There was nothing there, just darkness outside. She turned to alert another attendant. Only a second, but when she looked back, the seat was empty. Confused, she checked with every passenger and parent on board. Everyone's children were accounted for. They reviewed the manifest twice. No unaccompanied minors on board. Later that night, She passed the same row again and froze. The window shade was moving, slowly lifting on its own. The reflection showed a small figure sitting there, smiling. Again, but when she turned, the seat was empty. After landing, she told her supervisor, who grew strangely quiet. Finally, he whispered, "Last year, on this same flight, a child opened that exit door during taxi. He didn't make it. Some crew say he still tries." The attendant's blood ran cold. That night, she swore she would never work that route again. Every crew member trusts their pilot. They're the calmest people on board. But one night a flight attendant was doing her rounds when she saw the captain walking down the aisle. No greeting, no acknowledgement, just slow, eerie footsteps. Past the passengers. She assumed he was stretching his legs. Minutes later, she went to the galley, and there he was again, passing by without a sound. Something felt wrong. His eyes were open, but he looked like he wasn't there. And now she decided to check the cockpit and called the first officer. He answered instantly, "Captain's right here, flying." Her heart stopped. She looked back down the aisle. The figure was gone. After landing, she approached the captain and casually asked if he had been out in the cabin. His face drained of color. He said he had experienced a nightmare in the dream. He left the cockpit and walked the plane, unable to speak, unable to control his own body. He didn't know she had seen someone doing exactly that. Some crew believe planes collect memories of trauma, sometimes from pilots who have flown them for years, and every once in a while, those memories decide to walk the cabin. It was a red-eye flight, dark, quiet, uneventful. But as hours passed, one passenger rang the call button asking why sunrise hadn't appeared yet. The attendant shrugged it off. Maybe they had misjudged the time. But then another asked, and another. The cabin was getting restless. The attendant checked the clock. 3:13 a.m. Then she checked her wristwatch. 3:13 a.m. The galley display. 3:13 a.m. That was impossible. The flight had been in the air for nearly 6 hours. She tried calling the cockpit static. The cabin screens, normally showing the flight path, glitched into black. The air felt heavy, like they were stuck in a moment that refused to move forward. Passengers panicked, some crying that they were trapped. The crew did everything to calm them down, but inside, everyone felt something unnatural was happening. Finally, turbulence shook the aircraft violently. The lights flickered. A sudden drop, and then dawn through the windows. Captain announced descent, voice trembling. When they landed, gate staff looked confused. They asked, "Where did you come from? We lost your signal." 43 hours, your flight didn't exist on radar. No explanation was ever given. But none of the crew slept well for weeks after that night. Every flight has call buttons that ring from passengers needing help. But on this flight, one single seat, 32C, kept calling. The attendant approached with a smile, but every time she arrived, the seat was empty. She turned off the call light. Minutes later, it rang again, then again, and again. Passengers nearby said they kept hearing soft sobbing next to them, like someone crying into their hands. The attendant leaned close to the seat, and the temperature around it felt icy cold. She reported it, and the supervisor came to check. The moment he walked up, the call button stopped. Only when he left did it begin again. After landing, the crew discussed what happened. One senior attendant turned pale when she heard the seat number. She explained that a year earlier, on the same aircraft, a woman had suffered a medical emergency and passed away right there in 32C, crying for help as attendants tried everything to save her. Since that flight, some attendants avoid that row entirely, because when that call light rings, they say it's not asking for water or a blanket. It's a plea from someone who never got to say goodbye. On long-haul flights, the cabin goes completely dark. Only the emergency lights glow under the seats, creating strange shadows. A flight attendant was patrolling the aisle when she noticed a passenger sitting upright, wide awake, staring at her from the back row. Nothing unusual until she realized something. That row was empty when they took off. She thought maybe someone switched seats. She walked toward him, but with every step, The shadowy figure seemed to blur, like he wasn't fully solid. Just as she reached the row, he vanished. The entire section was empty. Feeling uneasy, she returned to the front. Later, she saw him again, this time in the mid-cabin, still staring, still silent. She rushed toward him, gone. Finally, the purser told her to ignore it, but she couldn't. She checked the booking list. The seat where she first saw him once belonged to a frequent flyer, a man who had died mid-flight months ago on this exact aircraft. He was traveling alone. Crew found him unresponsive after landing. Some believe he still boards every night flight, trying to reach a destination he never lived to see.
Right before landing, the captain always speaks, "Cabin crew, prepare for landing." But on one stormy flight, the announcement came too early, an hour early. The voice sounded like the captain, but with a strange echo, like two voices overlapping. Confused, the crew contacted the cockpit, and the real captain insisted he hadn't touched the intercom. When the strange announcement repeated, the passengers heard it too. Some began looking around nervously. The message changed. Brace, brace, impact soon. It was the exact phrase used in emergencies, but there was no emergency. The crew tried to calm passengers, but shaking hands and terrified eyes filled the cabin. They were flying smoothly, so why were they being warned? Hours later, the plane landed safely. The shaken attendants confronted the captain. He turned pale and whispered, "Years ago, this aircraft crash-landed. Many didn't survive. The recording of that final announcement was stored in its systems." He paused. That recording was erased, but the attendants knew what they heard. Sometimes, the memories of the aircraft find their way back, and they warn everyone what's already happened once and could happen again. Even with all the training and confidence flight attendants carry, there are some moments up in the sky that leave even the bravest of them shaken long after landing. Airplanes are built with technology, safety, and logic. Yet somewhere between the clouds and the darkness of night flights, logic doesn't always follow. The stories you just heard aren't from horror movies. They're real experiences from real crew members who continue to fly every day, knowing that the sky holds secrets most passengers will never see. Maybe it's the history of an aircraft, the spirits of those who never reached their destinations, or something else entirely watching from the aisles. The next time you're on a late-night flight and the cabin lights dim, try not to think about the empty seats, or the sound beneath your feet, or that one call button that won't stop ringing. And if a flight attendant avoids walking past a certain row, there might be a reason they don't want to look or be seen. Thank you for flying with us tonight through these chilling stories. Before you go, tell me in the comments which story will keep you awake on your next flight. And if you want a part 2, trust me, there are many more tales waiting above the clouds. Until then, keep your seatbelt fastened and don't look behind you.